Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari. Gopijana Vallabha Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Mishnapad Paramahansa Parujikacharya Ashtotar to the Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parujikacharya Ashtotar to the Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavin Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Krantaraj srimadbhagavatam Ki Jai. Asamaveta Bhaktavrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Narayanam Namaskritya Narang Chaiva Narottamam Deving Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jai Mudiriyet. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we should offer our respectful obeisances unto Lord Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and unto Srila Prabhupada, the translator, commentator, and our spiritual master. Nashta prayesha badreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavat yuttama shloke bhakti bhavati naishtaki. By regular attendance in classes on Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering devotional service to the pure devotee, all that is inauspicious within the heart is destroyed almost to nil, and loving devotion to the Supreme Lord, who is glorified in transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On his 14th day of September 2020 in SanDiego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are in Canto 4, the creation of the fourth order. Chapter 25, the descriptions of the characteristics of King Puranjan. Text 55. Sayayantak puragato Vishuchina samanvitaha moham prasadam harsham va yati jayatma jodbhavam sayayantak puragdho Vishuchina samanvitaha moham prasadam harsham va yati jayatma jodbhavam sayayantak puragato Vishuchina samanvitaha moham prasadam harsham va yati jayatma jodbhavam sayayantak puragato Vishuchina samanvitaha moham prasadam harsham va yati jayatma jodbhavam sayayantak puragato Vishuchina samanvitaha moham prasadam harsham va yati jayatma jodbhavam sayayantak puragato Vishuchina samanvitaha moham prasadam harsham va yati jayatma jodbhavam sayayantak puragato Vishuchina samanvitaha moham prasadam harsham va yati jayatma jodbhavam sayayantak puragato Vishuchina samanvitaha moham prasadam harsham va yati jayatma jodbhavam sayayantak puragato Vishuchina samanvitaha moham prasadam harsham va yati jayatma jodbhavam sayayantak puragato Vishuchina samanvitaha moham prasadam harsham va yati jayatma jodbhavam saha he yahi when antakpura to his private home gataha used to go Vishuchina by the mind samanvitaha accompanied moham illusion prasadam satisfaction harsham happiness va or yati used to enjoy jaya wife atmaja children udbhavam produced by them. Translation. Sometimes he, Puranjan, used to go to his private home with one of his chief servants, the mind, who was named Vishuchina. At that time, illusion, satisfaction, and happiness used to be produced from his wife and children. Purport. According to the Vedic conclusion, one's self is situated within the heart. As stated in Vedic language, Hridayamatma Pratishtitaha. The self is situated within the heart. In the material condition, however, the spirit soul is covered by the material qualities, namely goodness, passion, and darkness. And within the heart, these three qualities react. For instance, when one is in goodness, he feels happiness. When one is in passion, he feels satisfaction through material enjoyment. And when one is in darkness, he feels bewilderment. All these activities are of the mind, and they function on the platform of thinking, feeling, and willing. When the living entity is encircled by wife, children, and home, he acts on the mental plane. Sometimes he's very happy, sometimes he is very much satisfied, sometimes he is not satisfied, and sometimes he is bewildered. Bewilderment is called moha, or illusion. Illusion by society, friendship, and love. The living entity thinks that his so-called society, friendship, and love, nationality, community, etc., will give him protection. He does not know that after death he will be thrown into the hands of a very strong material nature that will force him to accept a certain type of body according to his present work. This body may not even be a human body. Thus the living entity's feeling of security in this life, in the midst of society, wife, and friendship, is nothing but illusion. All living entities encaged in various material bodies are illusioned by the present activities of material enjoyment. They forget their real business, which is to go back home, back to Godhead. Everyone who is not in Krishna consciousness must be considered to be an illusion. One's so-called feelings of happiness and satisfaction resulting from material things are also illusions. Factually, neither society, friendship, love, nor anything else can save one from the onslaught of the external energy, which is symptomized by birth, death, old age, and disease. To get even one living entity out of the illusory condition is very difficult. Therefore, Lord Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita 7:14, we can all chant together. Oh, I'll say, you say. Daivayesha gunamahi mama maya duratyaya Māmevaye papadyante Māyametang tarantite. This divine energy of mind, consisting of the three modes of material nature, is difficult to overcome, but those who have surrendered unto me can easily cross beyond it. Therefore, unless one surrenders completely at the lotus feet of Krishna, he cannot get out of the entanglement of the three modes of material nature. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmidatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So Puranjan is continuing to engage with his different, what do you call them, factors, senses. The mind, here the mind is mentioned, which is the said to be the sixth sense, the center of all the senses. And so he's going to his private home with his with one of his chief servants named Vishuchina. Now I didn't look that up, what that word means, but it's a name for the mind. So the process of yoga in general, and what to speak of bhakti yoga, is largely a process of retraining the mind. The mind is our best enemy, our worst, our best friend or worst enemy. Urared atmanatmanam, natmanam abhisariyet. Atmaiva yatmano jantur, bandur, atmaiva riparatmana. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, 6th chapter, that one should uplift himself by the mind, not degrade himself by the mind. The mind can be the best friend of the living entity or the worst enemy. The best friend or the worst enemy. So in our conditioned state, which has been going on for countless births, the mind is our worst enemy, in that it is, without any reference to Krishna consciousness or any way to break out of the illusion, in any species of life, we're always looking for, the mind is looking out through the senses and deciding, oh, this is pleasurable, this is painful. Go for the pleasure, avoid the pain. And there's unlimited varieties of these pleasures and pains. And Prabhupada, he summarizes them in household life or in ordinary conditioned life. What is it? The society, friendship, and love, and everything that comes with it. In materialistic household life, there's a variety of pleasures for all the senses. For the mind, there's this very, very strong attachment that develops to the spouse as well as the children. The children are a huge, a source of happiness and also, sadly, oftentimes distress. But they're a major, major element of attraction and attachment. And so in all of this, the Maya spins a whole, world for us. Each of us is walking around in a separate world attachments and aversions and hopes and difficulties, the positive and negative. And that's where we live. There's not even an understanding that there's another kind of existence, another kind of consciousness that one can have. And so this is what's being described. Paranjan is the conditioned soul, and Narada Muni is explaining all the different ways in which he's engaging with the material energy through the different senses. We've been through the 9 different gates now. Now we're going into the internal feature of the mind, which is really central to the whole project. So what to do? Well, we don't know what to do. If we don't get some mercy from Krishna directly, or more likely through his representatives, through his books, then we remain bewildered life after life, birth after birth, for millions and millions of births. And we understand that we've been through countless births to come to this state. Maybe, going around and around these 8,400,000 species. Asatim chataras chayava. There's a verse Prabhupada would like to quote. We come through 8,400,000 species till you get to the human form of life, which is a chance to break out of the prison of material life. But if one doesn't surrender to Govinda, then he just remains a complete fool. And especially in this age where there's sinful activity all around us, we're raised in that mentality, chances are we'll lose the human form of life and go down and just remain stuck. So this is these passages, this whole allegory, is meant to give us a realistic view of what material life is. It's generic. It means there's so many varieties of different ways in which you can be attached, but this is the general way in which it works in this context. So how to train the mind to not try to take pleasure in these gross sense pleasures, or the more deeper and long-lasting attachment of family and spouse and children, all that. Or let's say this, to get a bearing, a platform of understanding by which one can place everything in perspective and make your escape from this bondage and return back to Godhead the top priority in your life. And then everything else can be, there's a way of doing family life, there's a way of growing old, of going through adolescence, of even childhood, where there's this Krishna conscious element to it. And the Krishna consciousness becomes more and more prominent in your life, and you can attain a state. Now the mind, I was just hearing a lecture this morning from Prabhupada, and he was talking, he wasn't speaking from the 6th chapter, but he was referring to the 6th chapter, and he asked someone to quote that verse, to give the translation, Sukhamatyantikam yatad buddhigrayam atindriyam, which is a part of several verses in the that are translated together in the 6th chapter, describing samadhi. So describing the state when the Ashtanga yogi is completely absorbed, his mind is completely withdrawn from material matters and placed on the Supreme, and Krishna makes it very clear that Supreme is me. And then here's the result. Sukham atyantikam yatad buddhigrayam atindriyam. This is the first line of the description of that internal state. And he's experiencing the supreme happiness. How? By the intelligence through the spiritual senses. Atindriyam, through transcendental senses. And having attained this stage, Prabhupada loved this line, Yang labdva chapadam labam manyade nadikantada. He thinks there's no greater gain possible. Now just imagine that. Where in our material life can you think that? You may get something that you coveted as a child or grown up at any time. But can you possibly think, this is, there's no possible greater gain that I can imagine? No. There's always a compromise. I've got this thing, I've got this bicycle, but my friend has the other bicycle. Okay, I'll have to be satisfied with this one. Or you're not satisfied and you just, desiring it, and that becomes a source of suffering, this hankering, and then of course your bikes get stolen. Oh my God, lamenting, it's just as a child, but it goes throughout life that way. There's always another, horizon of enjoyment that you can aspire for. And meanwhile, the present one that you're on becomes unsatisfying, unfulfilling. You know, I mean, this is material life. You're always moving forward through time, and it's pushing you. And you know, this is one of the blessings of old age. Just like there's I think one of my next Zoom class for Toronto. It's going to be for Brampton. There's a suburb there. Brampton asked me to give class on Sunday. So what's the title? I asked, can you suggest a title? No, we have no idea. Okay, here's the theme. Seeing the silver lining in the COVID-19 cloud, you know. And what is the general principle there is that when things happen, which they will in this material world, that are painful, that are suffering, one can see this as a blessing from Krishna, you know, to give you the understanding, visceral understanding, that you can't be happy here. Now, it only works if you have some, you know, Krishna conscious reference that you can, you've read about it, you've experienced some of it, and say, yes, I can see that Krishna consciousness, the means of being happy in Krishna consciousness, doesn't depend on the strength of my senses and all these different things. You know, it really depends on the state of your consciousness. You know, your mind, if you can immerse your mind in the ocean of remembrance of Krishna, you can be happy in any situation. We saw that with Prahlad. That's what Prahlad says. It says, Naibod Vijay Padadodachita Vaitaranyas Tadvirya Gayana Mahamata Magnachitta. Now just imagine, this is, you know, and this isn't just millions of years ago. Our recent acharyas and present devotees also can attest to that. When you know, becoming absorbed in Krishna consciousness, hearing and chanting basically, can take you completely out of the bodily concept of life. Haridas Thakur is a much more recent example. You know, he was in bliss even though he'd been beaten. They thought they were trying to beat him to death. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. So we have to have faith in that. Now, what that means is that any state that your external body is in, if you're fixed in Krishna consciousness and remembering the name, form, qualities, and pastimes of Krishna, you can be happy on the spiritual platform. That's what the whole reservoir of pleasure is about. Just the name alone, because it's not different from Krishna. So you're associating directly with Krishna. Now, at first we can't taste the sweetness of the name. The mind is wandering, you know, having trouble, because it's the mind that's so accustomed to thinking of material sources of pleasure. You know, so we're battling that. That's called sadhana. That's the sadhana. Is to form your life in such a way that there are fewer and fewer distractions. You let it, you know, and you're doing everything you can to remember Krishna as much as possible. What is that verse? Smarta vyaktatam Vishnu tavinajatatit sarva vidinashediksur etayoreva kinkara. This is a really good verse to know. Always remembering Krishna, never forgetting him. All the other principles of bhakti are servants to these two. Now, what does that mean? It means that we should remember that we should remember that we should try to remember Krishna as much as possible in our activities. And you can see that they're geared to that. Yeah, okay. Someone maybe today or tomorrow soon will sweep the patio, and while sweeping that patio, probably be chanting Hare Krishna. So at least remember, yeah, with each stroke, I'm doing this for Krishna, that very Krishna on the altar. Let me remember him. Whereas, you know, a block away, you got some janitor working, and he's sweeping too, but he's not thinking of Krishna. The same activity is there, but the consciousness is a world of difference. That activity just keeps him conditioned. This activity leads to liberation, and more importantly, in this context we're speaking about, to ecstasy. You know, even while sweeping, if you're in the right consciousness, your tears will be flowing. You know, and so this is how we should deal with the mind. We need to more and more be aware of what we're thinking about. You know, while we're standing in the arti, in the samsara prayers are going, are we trying to think about the meaning of each word, how they fit together, and you know, make a wonderful glorification of the spiritual master. I always like to point out, what's the first line? Samsara dava nanavida loka tranaya. That's the first word. It's a big, long, compound word. And what it's saying there is that a spiritual master is delivering the people in general, anyone who takes advantage of the instructions, from this blazing fire of samsara, birth, old age, disease, and death. Now, we've all experienced those. We can't remember our last birth, and we can't remember our last death, but we can certainly remember and experience disease. Of the four, the disease is really the, old age goes with disease. Okay, so the spiritual master is coming, and he's delivering us from this. How grateful we should be. This is the first emotion that should come up, if you're really understanding what's going on there. Here we are at 4:30 in the morning. I walk over here every day. Everyone's asleep. It used to be in Pacific Beach. I guess now maybe the COVID has tamped things down a little bit. But especially on Saturday and Sunday mornings. Saturday is Friday night for them. So the parties would be going on. I'd be going, and I'd hear them going here and there. And then, but when I came back, at 8:30, it's quiet, because they're all crashing. In other words, what's night is day, what's day is night. So now it's not so much like that. It's really quiet every morning, what to speak of, even the weekends. Because the mood has changed a little bit. The all-night parties aren't going on. But I've been here 31 years. You've got people who were partying back in '89, who are with 21. Now they're in their 50s, Party's over. Now they're trying to pay the mortgage, they're worrying about their grown-up 20-year-old kid. What's he up to? Is he taking drugs? Or they themselves are taking drugs or, ruin their life. You can see, but I'm still going Mangalarti. In other words, the pleasure of Krishna consciousness doesn't wane with the natural age of the body and also things. If you've trained the mind to learn how to take pleasure in the Krishna consciousness. So here we see just the opposite, is that he's completely, it's a materialist, Puranjan. And his mind is absorbed on, what he can enjoy in the household and the kids and everything. And so, illusion, this is the illusion. This is Maya's illusion, is that you can somehow be happy and secure in the middle of this Holocaust. Sometimes I think it's described like that, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, one song. Trying to enjoy this Holocaust. This is it, it's like, what Bhaktivinoda should give that analogy. Someone has fallen into a blind well, but somehow he caught hold of a little outgrowth of some weed or something, or some vine. And so he hasn't fallen down. He looks down, oh my God, there's a lion down there. Oh, I'm saved, But how do I get out? And then he looks up. No, there's a lion up on the top, and there's a snake at the bottom, right? Yeah. So death on both sides. Now what do you do? All right, at least I can hold on to these until someone comes, these vines. But then there's a black rat and a white rat, day and night. It's chewing away at the vine. I'm doomed, But then there happens to be a beehive up in the tree just above him, and they made some honey. There's honeybees, and there's a few drops of honey dropping down on his head. And he looks up, oh, I can get this honey. And he's taking shelter of that honey and getting little drops on his tongue. And this way he's trying to forget his doomed situation. Now that's it's a cartoonish example, but really it's very accurate to what's going on in the material world. Everyone's doomed, we're all on death row here, and Maya gives us so many varieties by which we can try to forget it. Now, the most extreme examples, everyone's in different modes of nature. So those who are a little bit in the modes of passion and goodness, they're trying to enjoy the regular thing, like described here, And then there's the unfortunate souls in the mode of ignorance who are trying to enjoy drugs and alcohol. And, bad luck or whatever. We see people on the street, a lot of them are, trying to take shelter of that just to forget this horrible situation they're in. But really, there's no difference. Those who are trying to enjoy pleasures in the mode of goodness, it's still an intoxicant to make you forget your actual position.
which is that you're doomed, that it's all simply a waste of time. You're all going to suffer like anything and go, disease and old age and death. Well, let me not think about that. I'm busy trying to make money so I can enjoy. So it doesn't matter what mode you're in. It's the same activity. So Krishna consciousness means no intoxicants, right? So no intoxicants really ultimately covers every kind of sense gratification that you may take shelter in order to forget. We don't want to forget. We want to remember. We want to remember Krishna, and that means remember his instructions. Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadi, Dukkha, Dosha, and Darshanam. This is one of the elements of knowledge, is to always be seeing, this darshanam, be aware, at least, make it a central motivating factor. The evils of, and I like to put them in order, birth, old age, disease, and death. This is the cycle that we're in. So, plus the threefold miseries, So this is material life, and it's a basic impetus for surrender. I just gave a talk for my Scarborough friends in Toronto, and the theme was, we had a 2-part series on the 6 symptoms of surrender. Anukulyena sankalpa, partikulyasa bharjanam, rikshishyatiti vishvasa, goptadvevananam tata, atmanekshepa karpane, shadvadha sharanagati. And these processes of surrender are central to our practice. Anukulyasa sankalpa, to accept what's favorable for devotional service. And it's the reason why that's put first, because even if you're doing all kinds of nonsense, if you accept chanting Hare Krishna, come to the storefront and chant. You may be doing all kinds of nonsense, but you've come to the storefront and you're going to chant, and you get absorbed in the chanting, and you feel something. It probably doesn't work right. It may not work right away. You may go, but you'll remember that. Plus the prasadam, when Barbara got the prasadam going, things to bring you back, and the purification starts taking place. Purification of what? Of the mind, of the heart. So that's acceptance of the chanting, and then you read the books, you're in the association, and you say, oh, there's these other principles, to accept. The prasadam is first, but other things, getting up early, whatever. And of course, the things to reject, the 4 regulative principles. Those are the basic too. But when you realize it, so much of our practice, what doesn't fit into it? Accepting these things favorable and rejecting things unfavorable. And the more that we could be determined to do that progressively, the quicker we'll advance. And then Rakshishyatiti Vishwasa, this is a big one, to be confident of Krishna's protection. So much of material life is trying to ward off the material energy, build, weapons. America's, the masks. All right, it's protection. How to be safe from the COVID. So there's all these strategies. Okay, social distancing and this and that, and then the Holy Grail, the vaccine when it comes. Then we'll all get back to normal, right? Back to a little different variety of Maya. So that's the silver lining. Is to remind us of our mortality. And because it's so universal, the mood has changed. There's a mood. They got the sports going, but people aren't going to the sports. They may be trying to get back into it, but it's, they can't go and they have, it's amazing. They've got, in order to get the players going, they need to have fans. Well, they can't have the fans because it's too dangerous, so they put fake fans. You know that? You ever seen that? Plastic fans. I swear to God. Yeah, I don't know if they do it here. I've seen it, pictures of it in England and in Japan, soccer game, yes, I swear to God. Otherwise, players have to get in there. But yeah, undoubtedly, right? To enliven the players. Because they get off on the fans, to be in a big stadium with 50,000 empty seats. You can imagine how dry. Oh, the fans! He's so pure, fans. Yeah, yeah. But you can see, it's a perfect metaphor for Maya. In other words, the illusion is not quite good enough, so let's increase it. But isn't it absurd? I mean, here we're threatened by extinction here. I mean, this is a heavy pandemic and everything. Well, let's get our mind off it. We'll go to a basketball game or something. Anyway, it's all part of the same thing. It's all part of Maya's trick to make us forget, to think that we can be happy and forget our actual situation here. So Bhagavatam is meant to make us remember. Isn't that why Narada is telling King Prachetabarisha? He's in illusion. He's doing all these material sacrifices, trying to go to heaven, and he's not doing it very well. And so he's all of those animals are waiting that he sacrificed are waiting for revenge. And so Narada is there to give him this allegory and say, this is the real nature of what you're doing. You're keeping yourself bound up in this illusion of suffering, and it gets pretty heavy as you go on with the allegory. So what's the alternative? It's just like, what was that book Maharaj wrote? It was about that part of the Bible. What is it? Yeah, vanity karma. But what's the part of the Bible? Ecclesiastes. Yeah, Ecclesiastes. So it's a great story. He tells how it played a role in him coming to Krishna consciousness at the beginning. He's a great writer. And, he asked me to read the book, a proofread basically, and I found a few little errors. But the thing about it was that this Ecclesiastes, he became really aware of how empty material life was. That there's really no happiness here. And he's very eloquent in the way he describes it. But he didn't have the positive. He didn't have the, Krishna consciousness. Here's the alternative. Here's how you can get back away from this illusory happiness and all this suffering and get back home, back to Godhead for eternal life of bliss and knowledge. If you don't have that means, if you don't have that method, then you can veer off into nihilism and existentialism and hedonism even. Well, there's no, what's the point? We might as well try to blow out the senses as much as possible. That's quick self-destruction. So here in Srila Prabhupada works so hard to give us these books, this Bhagavatam. I mean, just when you think about it, his incredible work, getting up in the middle of the night and dictating these things, and then giving it over. The reason why one of the reasons he was able to produce so many books so quickly is because he had a whole crew who was able to go over it and bring it into exactly the form that we see here. But those were all his hands and legs. I mean, he inspired everyone to do that. And the result was just, fabulous. We have this Bhagavatam, which is our basic book, and also Bhagavad Gita, so many other books, to give us the full understanding. The Gita, Bhagavatam, the CC. I've been going through the CC, and you read there's so many, deep philosophy, teaching to Sanatana, all about the creation, the different Vishnus, everything is there, And then you get to this chapter, the sweetness of the Lord, and Lord Chaitanya just goes into ecstasy and he starts describing the beauty and the sweetness of the Lord, which is really the end of the whole thing. That's what we want. So, but coming back to the theme here, the mind, and we have so many facilities, beginning of course with the Sankirtan, the congregational chanting of the holy name. But this, the deities, the prasadam, the association, temple. I wanted to make a request, you can consider it. When Tirtha Maharaj was here, when he was called Mahatattva days, he really had an eye for colors and the design and things like that. And he would request us, please not to place anything on these pillars here, because the natural thing, well, where am I going to put anything around here, So sometimes on Sundays I would see people deposit things on Prabhupada's, Vasasan or something. And these are very tempting, all these little, and oftentimes on Monday morning I come in, there's a cup of sweet rice put up there, like that. So, but it's all, this whole place was really thought out, and designed. And so if we could try to avoid that, which we do pretty well, but the bead bags, we have this facility for hanging the bead bags. If we can just keep them around the side so they're not, it's a little design element. Please, humor me. Huh? Yeah, wife, she designed it, and there's a whole crew, yeah. I forget. Do you know? Kirtika or something like that. Yeah, there's a nice set of photographs. Purusha was here, the photographer. He's been here forever. And he was able to get some nice photographs of them working on it, actually doing it. There's some devotees came down from the Fate Museum. The Fate Museum was produced between 75 and 77, I think. And they called it the Fate, First American Theist Exhibit. They called it something else now. But then you had all these skilled devotees. They had mastered the art of the casting and everything, And so they came down here, and some of them spent a year. It took a year to design all this and get it. And even when I came in '89, it hadn't been completely finished. A lot of these things up here hadn't been painted. And gradually, someone would get up there and paint half of them, and then eventually they're all painted. There's even a few things missing. But it was it's unique. I mean, the amount of effort that went into this, it's really a gift, and it's in this very shape, I mean, she did research in India and is uplifting. It's so important, the architecture. I remember when I went to India one year, I took a really cheap flight to what is that? It's the capital of Romania, Bucharest, I think it is. And we landed there, and we had a layover for a day. They had just broken out of the communist thing, So a lot of the Soviet architecture was still around. I walked out on the street, and it was like very oppressive, The buildings are just like big radiators, My God, I mean, you can see how it get out. Whereas, architecture like the temple architecture, it's meant to uplift, and enliven, So this is all designed like that. It's gray, yeah, no colors. When we got off the plane, there were all these guys in these black leather jackets. So what is all this, So it had been, the secret police had worn black leather jackets, so you knew that was their uniform. So these weren't secret police. They would. Yeah, after the whole thing broke down, guys who wanted to look tough, they would get it. It was like a design, it was like a fashion thing. So they're like, anyway. So we're fortunate to have this temple. It's and it's part of what can help the mind, uplift the mind, and Krishna consciousness. All right, I'm going to read this translation again. Okay, well, that's the next one. Sometimes Puranjan used to go to his private home with one of his chief servants, the mind, who was named Vishuchina. I'm going to find out what that means. At that time, illusion, satisfaction, and happiness used to be produced from his wife and children. It was all illusion, illusory satisfaction and happiness. Any comments, questions on these points? Yeah, where's the mic? We activate the mic. Yeah. Thank you.
You made one comment in the class that, and it was in the context of COVID, that we're potentially facing extinction.
Did I say that?
Yeah, you did.
Well, potentially.
Wait. It's my comment.
Uh-oh. It's just a hoax.
In the absolute sense, what can we say at any given moment in this material world we're potentially facing extinction?
No. At
What
any
do you
given
mean,
moment,
no?
at any given moment in this material existence, we are facing that. You put the potentially in already at the beginning of it. At any moment, we don't know.
Thank you. That's what I wanted to hear. This is nothing new. We should be sober about the, which you quoted very nicely, Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadhi.
Yeah.
That's the wake-up call right there.
Well, the thing that I was stressing is that whether it's true or not, millions of people have been impacted by this. There's no question.
They're
about it.
afraid.
The
Their
world.
fear has been brought to the forefront.
Yes, the awareness of,
Potential.
may not be, as real as they think, but it's still real, much realer than they thought. And so, in a sense, it's good for preaching. It's really good for preaching. I mean, that's one of the factors of asking you, inspiring you to move in now, wasn't it? I heard. Maybe I'm wrong. The fact that the COVID is going on. Yeah. Tell us the story. This is very inspiring. Yeah, you need to hold the mic.
Yeah, I was using this coronavirus pandemic to move into the temple. I told my work, oh, nothing is guaranteed. You know, I might lose my job, my position, so I'm gonna just dedicate my life to the temple.
So you had been wanting to for some time, but this became so that, hey, that's more than a silver lining. That's a golden lining. So you have Glenn here, living here because of that. We can, yeah. So that, you know, that's. Why does Krishna mention that? You know, he mentions it because everyone is aware of it, but no one has made it central to their lives. I was thinking of this verse I didn't quote in the class, Deha Patta Kalatarade Shatpasainvisa Sattva, beginning of the second canto, where Shukadeva is speaking to Pariksit, and he's saying, what a wonderful question. What to hear, what to think about, what to do at the end of life, you know, which he's facing in a few days. And then, great question, but, you know, those who are Griyamedi consciousness, this material, they have millions of things to hear, which distracts their mind. But what do? They try to take shelter of the fallible soldiers, of the wife and the body and the children and the wife and the bank balance. You know, the list is short, but you can extend it. And although they've seen that people have been betrayed by these soldiers, beginning with the body, they don't see. Pashyana bina pashyati. This is the problem. It's right in front of their face, but they don't take it seriously as a challenge to their whole way of life. Krishna conscious philosophy is so radical, being, you know, down to the very root of the problem. That's what radical means. That people are afraid, you know, to challenge it, because you're so accustomed to thinking in a certain way. To try to come up to someone and say, you know, everything you believe is completely wrong. I mean, we don't preach like that. But if you read the books, that's actually what it is. It's all an illusion.
That's how Prabodhananda Saraswati
preached,
with a smile. And
well, first you say, oh, you're such a learned soul. You know, you touch their feet or something, you know, straw in the mouth, right? My dear sir, you're very, very learned. Now please forget everything you learned and just take shelter of Lord Chaitanya. But that's really, you know, what it takes. It takes a complete overhaul of everything you believed in life. You know, and it's not easy. That's why, you know, this disasters which really undercut your whole assumption of your whole philosophy of life are good in a sense, because in that shaken up situation, if someone comes into touch with the devotee or the books and is a little bit receptive, has some background, you know, then the seed can be planted in a receptive heart. If someone is, you know, thinks he's got it made, you know, very hard to preach to them. Anyway, okay. All glory to Srila Prabhupada.